Welcome to another edition of YesAuto News. I'm Cam Tate, and this week I'd like to talk about BMW, as some people think the company is spiralling out of control because the designs of its cars are a little bit terrible. BMW's design has been put under the spotlight once again this week following the launch of the new 4 Series. It may essentially be a coupe version of the 3 Series, but that didn't stop BMW from radically redesigning the front end and whacking a massive kidney grille in front of the engine. It's fair to say that not everyone is in love with the design, especially as the 4 Series will serve as the basis for the all-new M4 that's due to arrive next year. Now, I've been hearing a lot of comments from the car community that go along the lines of, "It'll be the end of BMW," and "The car designs make me want to be sick." But I'm here to explain that an ugly BMW doesn't necessarily mean the downfall of the company. If anything, it could be the best thing to happen to them in years. What does the BMW name mean to you? Is it the race-inspired E30 M3 from the late 1980s, the mid-engined M1 supercar from the 70s, or perhaps more recently, the monstrously powerful M4? Whichever way you cut it, it's clear to see BMW's roots in most of its cars on sale today, but we often forget that wasn't always the case. In 1992, BMW recruited American designer Chris Bangle, known at the time for the Fiat Coupe and Alfa Romeo 145, to lead its design team. It was clear that Bangle was keen on taking BMW's classic, if a little iterative, design language in a new direction. Though he played a part in the design of the E39 5 Series, the E46 3 Series and the X5 SUV, the so-called Bangle era arguably didn't get underway until the introduction of the Z9 Gran Turismo concept in 1999, which would eventually reach production as the revived 6 Series. Then, in 2001, BMW unveiled its new E65 generation 7 Series saloon, and it sent the motoring world completely mad. Gaining the nicknames Hamburger Headlight and Bangle Butt, the E65 7 Series was one of the most hated cars in BMW's history purely because of its design, although we'd later find out that they were pretty unreliable too. Hot on the heels of the 7 Series was the new 5 and 6 Series, both of which were panned for their designs at launch, but I'd argue that they've aged quite gracefully. The same can't be said for the X6, which is still a monstrosity, though it did start the trend of coupe-like SUVs, which, for some reason, are incredibly popular today. The Bangle era was controversial, but there's no doubt it was a resounding success for BMW. People hated Bangle's design so much that petitions were started to get him kicked out of the firm, but that didn't stop drivers buying them in droves. He never seemed to give a damn about what people thought either, and that probably made the cars more appealing. I'd rather drive a car that was designed by passion rather than one that was created through a committee meeting. So if Bangle was so great, why did BMW start toning down its designs when he left in 2009? Well, we don't know for sure, but I'd argue that BMW didn't want another press disaster on its hands. The problem is though, is that the pendulum swung the other way and people started complaining that BMWs were too boring. The 7 Series was arguably the most boring of the bunch. We know they're primarily used as executive mobiles, chauffeuring CEOs to meetings and picking people up in front of the airport. To many, the 7 Series is a statement car. Arrive at your business meeting in a 7 Series and you'll make the person who arrived in a 5 Series look like garbage. The problem is, the 7 Series looked like a slightly bigger version of the 5 Series. You'd need a beard and a cardigan to spot the difference, and I doubt business folk want to spend the time explaining to their subordinates why the 7 Series is a superior car. You need a visual cue to tell people that you're better than them, something that the Mercedes S-Class and Audi A8 do very well, but less so the 7 Series. Or should I say, the previous 7 Series. In 2019, the company introduced a radical facelift with a gigantic grille that, like Bangle-era BMWs, was widely mocked by the motoring world. And because social media is a far bigger beast than it was 15 years ago, the facelifted 7 spawned a bunch of memes like this one, and this one, and this one too. The car's designer, Alexei Kiza, says the grille was enlarged to help differentiate it from the 5 Series and make it more appealing to markets outside of Europe. It seems to have worked too. Chinese media reports that BMW had record sales in the region last October, with the 7 Series, X7 and 8 Series boosting luxury sales by 60%. I saw the new 7 Series at the Geneva Motor Show last year, and I was frankly shocked at how massive the grille is. In my view, it seems a little bit lazy, as if a designer kind of mocked the look up on Photoshop on their lunch break and thought, yeah, that'll do. But like Bangle-era cars, the controversial design of the 7 Series doesn't really seem to have had an effect on sales. Which is why the 4 Series will sell in ridiculous numbers. While the 7 Series was mocked by the car community, the 4 Series is proving more divisive. Some people are fans of the look, arguing that it gives the 4 Series a bit of an identity, something that was severely lacking with the previous version. What's more, BMW has actually put some effort into designing the 4 Series. The grille looks a bit like the old 3-litre CSL and the 6 Series from the 1980s, so it's not like the design has been plucked out of thin air. And I'd argue the grille fits within the proportions of the car, and the same can't be said for a lot of BMW's recent unveilings. The 4 Series isn't exactly a looker, but it's without doubt the boldest step in design the company has taken since the launch of the E65 7 Series 19 years ago. The saying, "there's no such thing as bad publicity," is something that I've never really agreed with. Look at Cambridge Analytica, for instance, or the Rich Energy debacle in Formula 1 last year. But the 4 Series, and to a lesser extent the 7 Series, are a little bit different. The controversy surrounding them has got us talking about BMW design for the first time in years. I mean, think about it. People don't get this worked up about the C-Class Coupe or the Audi A5. Now, whether this has an effect on sales or not, we don't know yet, but it clearly didn't do BMW any harm when Bangle shook up the formula 20 years ago. But I'd like to know what you think. Are you a fan of the 4 Series, or would you like BMW to go back to a more traditional design? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll come and join you. That wraps up another episode of YesAuto News. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like what you saw, why not leave us a like, or maybe even, I don't know, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And don't forget that you can head over to YesAuto.com for all the latest car news and reviews. I'm Cam Tate. I'll see you next week.